All right, good evening, everyone. This is Laurie Wondra with YourLifeCore, and joining me again this evening is Mark Griffon with Sedona Mystical Tours. Welcome, Mark.
Oh, thank you, Laurie. Doing fine out here. We're finally going into the hot weather. And
Yeah,
joked with you about how it's been warmer in Minnesota than here for a number of weeks.
it's been actually beautiful. And I think about you each time I am outside. Today I was out in the woods and um, got my first touch with mosquitoes. I'm hesitating telling you that, but just the first touch of summer here from Minnesota. You know, sometimes we get blasted with mosquitoes, but it's actually very, very beautiful. I shouldn't say it was the bugs are getting to us.
Well, one
So,
one of the things I was told from some people who have gone to the Amazon is they took Burt's Bees bug spray, and they said it worked great down there.
ah,
I'm going to be bringing it along with me.
when you come here in a few weeks, yes, we look forward to having you back in Minnesota a few weeks, and you'll be able to enjoy our beautiful outdoors and along the North Shore. We'll be headed up there. So I am looking forward to that, and we'll be offering a number of classes and workshops and some sound healing events when you're in Minnesota here in June. And if people want to see where you're going to be with me or where we're going to be doing events, you can visit yourlifecore.com and or Facebook, Laurie Wondra, YourLifeCore, and check out the events. So, but for tonight, what I want to talk about is we are standing very closely to the gateways of June, and I get asked almost on a daily basis when the energies are going to subside a little bit, and I know June is going to be another intense month, and so we want to talk about planetary influences, energy influence for our listeners for June. And the first one coming up is really, we've got a new moon on June 4th. That's less than a week away. But then there's a grand cross coming in. And I really want you to help us understand what a grand cross is, Mark, and how that impacts us. Because it's fairly rare. Is that true?
Yeah, it doesn't happen that frequently, and when it does happen, typically you have to have three planetary bodies at kind of strong angles to one another. So if you would, for example, think of a T intersection on a road, that would be what typically is existing already, and then the movement of a faster planet like the Venus, Mercury, or the Sun come along and create an intersection with four lanes of movement and energy. And so think about when you have an intersection with no stop signs, that causes a flow to merge in the middle, to reflect back out to the opposite sides. And you could look at a grand cross as a confluence of these planetary energies, and so it's going to sometimes lead to a sense of feeling overwhelmed. And the individuals who will be affected by this the most will be what are called the mutable or changeable signs of Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces.
Can you repeat those one more time again? Gemini, Virgo, Pisces, and Sagittarius?
Yeah, Sagittarius and Pisces. That's just going around the zodiacal clock.
Yep, I wanted our listeners to hear, because people often ask, you know, how does it impact me? So probably more so those that are born under those signs, but I would say also that all of us will be impacted by the Grand Cross because of the intensity of the energy. We simply can't escape that. And you talked about an intersection, and I know most of my clients or students that have seen me, I use a visual. If you were to put a cross up in front of you, or a big T in front of you, and if we were to place the planets that we're talking about here, and let's just put Saturn at the top of that cross, and the Sun, Venus at the bottom of that cross, and talk about what those planets are. So for example, I think of Saturn as how we experience reality, and it's oftentimes where we meet resistance and we discover our limitations. It really represents the consciousness that we have, or the rules or the laws that we kind of are governed by, or we we have beliefs in obeying too, that type of thing. Is that true?
Well, that's true when it's in Sagittarius, because that influences law. And Saturn itself is, I always refer to it as a cosmic taskmaster. It rights the wrong in our everyday life and in our habits. So when it's having this opposition with Venus and the Sun, we're being challenged to look at our value structure. It can be a little bit harsh, so self-criticism and judgment will come into play, as well as lack of accomplishment and judging and criticizing others around you. So there's going to be a lot of reflectivity, opposition energy. 180-degree opposition has a lot to do with reflectivity, a lot to do with mirroring an energy pattern from yourself to another and then from them to you.
Well, and that's because I want to step back a little bit, because Venus is about relationships and awareness and harmony or sociability. It's those types of things. And so what you're talking about is when you've got opposition in that relationship, that's where judgment might show up. Is that correct?
Correct, and it represents our values, what we feel is important to us.
Saturn is, I read somewhere that Saturn is almost the gatekeeper of our knowledge, or it represents like the phoenix rising. And I asked the question because I have been seeing a tremendous amount of shifting in relationships, endings or just very, very sudden new beginnings. There are strong shifts, almost like you said, that 90-degree turn. If I were making a 90-degree turn at this intersection, I'm seeing that in my clients' relationships, and I can feel it, and I hear it from my guides and the angels that provide information that it's planetary influences. It's this time that we're going through of clearing out and assessing our own our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with others. But how might people experience that with this coming into the Grand Cross? And I have to believe we're feeling that now already. Before we even get to this weekend. Is that true?
It is, because we had the Venus opposing the energy of Mars, and
yeah,
same place where Saturn was. And so that was a combination of Saturn and Mars's influence.
And that was just last weekend.
Yeah.
So that was really, really tough. And so there's more of the same in how we look at relationships between this if I look at my cross or my T and Saturn at the top and Sun Venus at the bottom, they're in direct opposition to each other, and so therefore they're creating this conflict. And I want to touch a little bit more about, sometimes when we talk about relationship, it's not always external. We could be having conflict with ourselves, because we have our first relationship is with ourselves. It's this inner dynamics that we have, and so we could be experiencing some conflicts with how we look at ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, how we feel we should be in the world. Is that true?
It is. That's where the self-criticism is going to be coming in strongly.
Okay. All right. And how long is that particular opposition going to be in play? Or do you want to look at the full Grand Cross before we talk about when we start to move out of this Grand Cross?
Well, we can just expect up until the Sun leaves Gemini on the solstice of summer, because there'll still be Mercury involved, that there'll be an energy that kind of promotes this on this feeling of a Grand Cross.
Okay. So that's going to be until June 20th, June 20th, June 21st. Yeah. Okay. So then let's look at our cross then. If I were to have that cross still in front of me, and if I were to look at the lines that are going across the center, to the right of my picture, that would be Jupiter, and to the left of my picture would be Neptune. And so those would be on the horizontal axis of my cross. And so let's talk about Jupiter, because Jupiter is really about our individuality, or it's our individual being. It's our purpose, but it's also our sense of hope, really our philosophy on life. Is that right?
In a sense it is, and it's a social energy, how we relate to the masses. And it tends to be a big influence wherever it sits. We always have said it can magnify, in a sense, a good, pleasant experience, or it can magnify an unpleasant experience and create disharmony. So it's kind of a neutral energy. But wherever it comes into contact, whatever it comes into contact with is going to be expanded significantly. So it's opposing Neptune, and that creates a lot of disillusionment, confusion about the truth of whatever we're experiencing in our lives, forcing us to really to be more precise, to in a sense really put a disciplined effort into knowing what we're meant to be doing, pursuing the idea and the dream that Neptune represents. The Jupiter in particular sign it's in, Virgo, is coming at Neptune with a very strong structure, and Neptune's in Pisces, which is just dissolving false beliefs. It's dissolving false ego. It's dissolving the misperceptions that we've been carrying about anything in our life.
So Neptune is also about that super sensory skills that we have. It's sometimes called, I think of it sometimes as it's a door opening to the experience of our life. Is there a possibility that we think about it, it's a doorway into the ability to move into another step of higher consciousness at this point? Because I feel like we're moving into, it's almost a portal that we're moving into. I mean, intuitively, what my guides are telling me is that this is another gateway of sorts that we're stepping into.
It represents having strong spiritual experiences when the two of those planets are together, like they are now. When these experiences they are going to require more personal effort from us,
okay,
as opposed to something just flowing along and opening up, the potentials of who knows what. This one will think about we're facing the judgments that we've held against ourselves and others, and this influence is trying to remove that, and that's going to be very, very challenging to the ego, because that means the ego is going to have to let go of its concepts and perceptions of what right and wrong are. And Neptune in a way represents no right or wrong. How's that sound?
Well, I hear that as that could be a very scary thing for people if they don't understand what's pushing them or what's influencing them. But it also can be a very threshold for them to step into if they do learn, or if they are in that place of letting go and seeing or experiencing things in a different way.
No, you're right.
Because of the sensory part of this.
But that's where the need to have some discipline, because you have to watch, how the ego is going to play with you to go back into the old paradigm of what you believe and what you feel you see, hear, and touch.
I honestly think that in some of the other energy influences that are coming in, there isn't a possibility to go back, and I think that's where people might be struggling. And you can tell me your feeling on this too, but I feel like we're going to want to go backwards, but what was there before is gone.
Yes.
And that's what we're struggling with, is like we have to go forward.
Yes, that's I keep saying it's going to require us to have some discipline and put our efforts in a forward moving direction, and not go back to the so-called comfort zone that's going to be dissolved. And the pace of the movement on the planet with its consciousness is speeding up so fast. At times it makes me almost feel dizzy. It makes me actually sit and question what I need to believe in at this point in my life. And I know a lot of my colleagues are feeling the same way.
Yeah, it's it's a shift in our shift is what I've been calling it. And so, for example, if I do energy work on people, or if I look at their energy, there's a definite misbalance or a different spin to the chakra system, or the shift, leaning of sorts, in the energy fields. And I started noticing that, I mean, at the beginning of the year, as I started looking at clients, I noticed a difference in the outlying lines of our different energetic bodies around people. But I've really noticed it in the last week. And it causes me to sit back and not stare at a client, but to think as to, okay, this is different. What is this? And then just trusting. For me, it's trusting my angels and guides to come in and do whatever they need to do. But it is different, and so people have to be feeling this very differently in their spiritual, their emotional, their physical body, and definitely in their etheric energy bodies.
They are. I've been feeling that way. Let's think about our reference system for feeling is being taken away. We're being restructured even at that level of feeling. So how we felt about anything a year ago isn't going to apply. It's not going to affect us the same way now. And that's very disconcerting to those types of individuals who need to have a pathway of structure and form and consistency. There's nothing consistent about what's taking place now. And that, if you want to say what's the biggest challenge about this grand square, it's expect the unexpected, and to realize that the consistency of what we've been doing is no longer. Mm-hmm. That's disheartening to many who've had a whole lifetime of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just sitting with what you've said about our whole system of feeling is shifted. It's almost as our compass has been recalibrated in a way. And I can see it in the energy field. I can see it in the spiritual body. I can see it in the emotional body. And so people feeling a certain situation or feeling about a certain situation, like a passion about something, or even a sadness or a happiness about something, or a deep love about something, what they're shifting in is not having that same feeling. It might be more, it might be less, it might be they just totally don't care anymore about it.
Yeah, probably it will be mostly they don't care about it anymore because the illusion of what they were attracted and fascinated to is gone.
Yeah.
And that's these planets that are involved, you keep asking, they're harder to pinpoint than, let's just say, the typical structured planets like Mars, Mercury, Venus, and Saturn. When you mentioned Saturn, it's been the gatekeeper between, in a sense, the more confined and structured consciousness, not necessarily lower consciousness, but more of a structured consciousness, and then super consciousness goes beyond it, meaning the planets that are after Saturn bring that type of effect in mass conscious change. Mm-hmm. And Neptune is one of those planets. And of course, Saturn is there trying to, it's almost like you're trying to have an engineer design a pathway flow for air. It's just that kind of a metaphor. We're bringing in something that we've never in our personal lifetimes have experienced, these types of energies, and the body's matrix is being adjusted. And a good example is anybody who's has a cat, how much they hate being put in a car, and the reason why is because they have a certain chemical composition in their brain that it's like magnetite. It aligns with the polar directions, and when they're moved abruptly, they become disoriented, unlike a dog. And we're becoming disoriented because those alignments are changing so fast. We don't have time to adjust. The only thing we could kind of do is ride this wave of air that's taking place, coming through, sweeping through. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
That's the shift in our shift, because we're always moving, but this is a shift within the overall shift. And I think that's what's kind of catching people off guard is just when you think you've got the balance. It's like, standing up in a boat, and you feel like you've got the balance and you're stable, and then a big wind comes along or a big wave comes along.
Or you have to jump into another boat.
Oh, that's the, okay, I got it. So we're not, so the change is that massive then, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's what creates a lot of the, if you want to say, the negative feelings we have about ourselves and others, is because we're being forced to change just on every level of ourselves. That's maybe what you would say what a Grand Cross could represent also. It's that, you know, 4 strong areas of our life are being challenged to bring about change. And therefore you're having to jump onto another boat, you're having to change houses, all the things that bring a sense of security, comfort, and balance, and you know, the routine, the consistency, the the knowing what's going to be like tomorrow, it's gone. And our biggest fear as humans is the unknown.
I would agree with that. We've been in a constant state of that, changing and shifting in the unknown. Well, let's talk a little bit about the summer solstice then. That is on, so we have a full moon, June 20th, and then we've got the summer solstice there also. So what can our listeners expect around that part of the month?
Well, the full moon is going to be in the last degree of Sagittarius right before the solstice occurs, which is the first degree of Cancer. And not to confuse you, when something happens on that last degree of a sign, it has a very strong impact. So the full moon's representing the mass consciousness in a way, and Sagittarius is representing truth-seeking and you know, the structure of law and higher knowledge. So this, you know, the impact of 2 full moons in Sagittarius, we've already had one and we're going to have a second one. It's going to be even more precise in all of us just being truthful with where we are at in our personal journey, what we are willing to accept and believe. And it's kind of, you know, I don't want to go into too many current events with these things, but it just is so timely that it's going to just be leading into the 2 parties conventions in the summer. And that's, you know, going to be a strong theme, is what is, you know, what truth, what is really going on, and that the public is being told. And this is going to be the energy that the public's going to be hungry for. Remember, if it's in the last degree of a sign, it's just strongly emphasized, and that's what's happening with this particular full moon. And as you know, when you have a seasonal change, and this is something I've always noticed in Sedona, when we go into the summer solstice, the following 2 weeks, the temperatures spike. They go, you know, maybe from the low 90s into 100 or more. And every summer, it seems like that same thing happens. So, you know, the planets, with the way they line up on a seasonal change, affects the weather for those next 3 months.
Interesting.
It is.
Interesting. Well, I definitely know that June is going to be an intense month. I can feel it. I am already getting messages from my angels and guides. I also always know, I kind of have a feeling as to what the month is going to be by just the types of events that show up. So, for example, in May, my calendar was filled with a lot of sound healing. I knew a lot of people were shedding things, preparing, creating space. And I didn't know exactly what they were creating space for, and what it sounds like based on our conversation tonight is we're stepping into this threshold or stepping into a new portal that's going to create some more shift, and being kind of ready for expect the unexpected. The universe is going to kind of make some decisions for us, I think, along the way, and shove us or gently nudge us, I hope, for most of us, gently nudge us in the direction that we should be following. So. And
I just, you know, got an impression the use of our free will is going to be challenged. And our free will is designed, well, we have a free will to follow our life's path or not. And so this is a very dramatic time where all of us are going to be asked to use our will to follow our divine path, our life's purpose, or, you know, deal with the consequences. And we, you know, we're always concerned about the unknown, but the thing is, when you really can hold the energy of love and faith in you, love is an energy, faith really is an energy, then everything's always going to work out the way it's meant to. Our perceptions keep us in the sense of distress. It keeps us in a state of unhappiness because we're expecting something to turn out the way we plan it versus the way it's meant to happen. We're in a time where what's meant to happen is going to almost be force-fed into us.
And that's what I was getting, is that many of us are just going to be literally shoved. You're talking about the Jupiter energy, that purpose, people really following what their purpose is. And I know I have a lot of my clients and listeners that are on that place of looking for, what's my purpose, what's next for me. So this will be an interesting time for them. I also want to come back. You talked about being in that space of the frequency of love and hope and peace. And that's actually one of the workshops that you and I are going to be talking about when you're here, is about very focused about the energy of love and just the power that that frequency has to shift and guide us through our life. So I'm really looking forward to that event, as well as some of the other events, one on manifestation and one just about higher consciousness also. Like, what are we experiencing in the stages of higher consciousness? What does it mean about evolution and collective consciousness? So I'm looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to those events with you. So before we close up tonight, any last words of wisdom for our listeners as we go into this summer time, the summer month of June?
And it's difficult for me to really provide anything precise on this go around. I would, just like we're all feeling. It's like I think the words acceptance and surrender are very, very key. And it's something I remind myself of. We're surrendering to this guiding influence in our life, and it guides all of us, and it's moving us in a direction for the betterment of the world. And when as long as we continue to accept that guidance, everything will be fine. No matter what doesn't look like it will be, it's going to turn out to be fine. As we resist it, then more things become difficult. It's only to get us to change and go back into following this flow that's been laid out for us. And we're just really going to be up against our egos, I think, and just being aware of it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I live by the motto, if something flows very easily, then I'm in the flow. If I start struggling with something, or if it feels like too much of a push, I literally step away from it. And I think in this go-around in June, we're going to be getting some of those hard pushes, and it might be for those of us that aren't aware of the more subtleties of being in or out of the flow. So it's going to definitely be an interesting month ahead of us. So I'm looking forward to it. So with that, Mark Griffon of Sedona Mystical Tours, and I'm Laurie Wondra of YourLifeCore. We send you off with the most high frequencies of love and peace and joy for the rest of your week, and we look forward to meeting you back here again on YourLifeCore Blog Talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie. And